So for this chapter, we're going to be talking about epilepsy and first defining the different types of epilepsy before we move into thinking about the treatments for those different types of epilepsy. So epilepsy is often characterized by seizures, which are defined as bursts of uncontrolled electrical activity and causing abnormalities or differences in muscle tone or movement. So either stiffness, twitching, or limpness. And it can also change other behaviors, sensation, or states of awareness. So often, not often, but at times people can become unconscious if they're having a seizure. Sometimes they do stay conscious, but they may lose consciousness at times. And there are different types of seizures, and they are often defined by how they begin. So we'll start with partial seizures. And the partial means that they have a focal onset. So they start in one place, but they might spread to both sides. So a partial or focal onset seizure may progress to a bilateral, tonic-clonic, and we'll see there's a lot of tonic and clonic. So what you need to recognize is tonic is stiffening, and clonic means jerking. So tonic is often full contraction of muscles so that the body is completely stiff because you are contracting both. When you have to have two sets of muscles, right? You have your, let's think about biceps and triceps, right? So if you contract your biceps, your arm's going to move towards you. If you contract your triceps, your arm's going to move away from you. But if those are both contracting at the same time, your arm is going to be very stiff. So that is why this tonic it's like firing of all the muscles at once. And that's what leads to that full body rigidity. And then the clonic is when the muscles are tensing, loosening, and then you get those jerky rhythmic movements. And then towards the end, when the seizure has stopped, then there is a slowing and then a relaxation that happens. But just remembering, tonic is the full stiffness, clonic is the jerky movements. And when we're thinking about these focal seizures, it may start in one region of the brain, so maybe there might be stiffness in one area of the body, but that can progress to both sides of the brain so that you have full body stiffening or jerking. And thinking about the activity that's happening in the brain, right? There's too much neural activity, and that can start in one region and stay in one region, or that can start in one region and then spread to other regions, or what we'll see in some of our other definitions, it can start in multiple areas at the same time. And like we just saw, the other definition for the seizures that are going to start in multiple areas or both sides of the brain are general onset seizures. So the partial seizures start on one side of the brain and can spread to the other. General onset seizures are going to start in both hemispheres at the same time. And when you think about, up here we said you may lose consciousness for a partial seizure, but with the general onset seizure, the person will lose consciousness or may lose consciousness earlier. So more at the start of the seizure since it's happening on both sides of the brain at the same time. And these general onset seizures are likely to affect awareness in some way. So when these are further characterized, the terms aware or impaired awareness aren't used because there is going to be some type of impairment. And they can be further classified by movement. And they're classified by either the presence of movement or the absence of, or not affecting movement, right? So generalized onset motor seizure can involve the same tonic-clonic stiffening and jerking, or other types of movements. And these used to be known as grand mal seizures. But I think they changed it so that people would understand the meaning of it more. So this generalized motor seizure starts in both sides of the brain and leads to the stiffening and jerking movements, kind of like your classic view of someone having a seizure. A little bit non-classic is the generalized non-motor seizure. So these are brief changes in awareness, staring, and may have some automatic or repeated movements, lip smacking being one possibility, or just like small jerking. So instead of like the large jerking that you see with those generalized motor seizure, you can maybe have some other repetitive movements. These types of seizures are generally less obvious, less notable. I had a student in a class a long time ago who experienced seizures during class, almost every class period, and it was not noticeable. So she would just sit at the back of the room, and then I could see that she would get kind of a gay or glazed look, and then would kind of zone out a little bit and have a few small twitches. But, you know, that happened so often for her. And so many times people would call and the EMTs would come and then she would be fine. And so at that point, you know, if you know someone who has seizures like that, you just want to stay with them, make sure that they are okay, and then they will likely recover, right? You don't need to call in emergency response team all the time for individuals who are having a seizure. And I like this as a visual because it will help you respond to someone who may be experiencing a seizure. Sometimes if they have like the generalized motor seizures, it's a little bit scary, but often the seizures are small enough and the individuals are not flailing around wildly. And so the thing to do is to stay with them until it is over. You can time the seizure. You can, if you don't know them, you can check for any kind of medical information. But the main thing to do is just make sure they're not going to fall, and just to keep them safe. So move them away from anything sharp or pokey or a fall hazard, and then just let the seizure happen. Don't try to restrain them. Just let it happen. And then if they lose consciousness, you do want to turn them on their side. Don't put anything in their mouth, and then just make sure there's nothing around their neck. So just make sure that they're going to be okay. That's the best thing that you can do. If the seizure lasts for a long time, or they don't return to their usual state, or they may have other things, or difficulty breathing, and especially if it's in water, like take them out of the water. But often you don't need to call 911. So just give them about 5 minutes, and then if everything resolves, then they're going to be okay. And then here's the list for do nots, right? So don't restrain them and don't put anything in their mouth because they could choke on it. Okay, so that defines the different types of epilepsy. And now we can move forward thinking about if we are going to design drugs to prevent seizures, what part of neural signaling should we target? So this is what we're going to look at for the rest of the videos.